So Bazett is over here on the NA version of the game for the Valentine's event, and I am very excited for this unit to actually be over here because she is what I would consider to be almost a perfect all-rounder unit. And what I mean by that is that she's pretty much able to do everything very well. Not the best in any one area except maybe taking down casters. She's pretty good at that. But if you want to bring her to challenge quest, she'll always do rather well. If you want her to be your farmer with the counter damage, she can oddly do that very well as well. And I just think she's one of those very valuable units that, sure, you don't need to summon for Bazett. It's not like you're missing out on something. You could honestly probably still find the same effect in using Bazett as a friend, but if you do summon for her, you get the effect of being able to double up on some supports, right? You could go double Scotty, or you could bring, say, a Castoria that you don't have, and Ruler Scotty when she comes out. If something weird like that is your prerogative, maybe you really need the debuff cleanse for whatever fight you're going into. But I just really like this unit. When she came back last year and I did my video on her, I was pretty excited to actually test her out really thoroughly. And getting to do that again, I'm finding that I still hold the same position that she's just a very strong unit. Again, not the best in any one area, but just is going to serve you very well. She almost kind of reminds me in a way of, say, Space Ishtar, where your box will make very good use of that servant, where Space Ishtar kind of just adapts to whatever you have. Bazett's just going to be good kind of going into everything. But we're going to talk about her in today's video to make sure that you know what the servant does and how you should be using them. But as always, if you enjoy daily FGO content, make sure you leave a like in the video, make sure you subscribe, and I know that I haven't been streaming very consistently this last week. I've been finishing Baldur's Gate 3, so normally I would say I stream every weekday or every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but this last week has been a little bit dicey on that end, to say the least, but I'll be back next week, alright? Everything will be consistent next week, I swear. I just really wanted to see what the endings were like. I wanted to make sure that I didn't mess up the entire game. I put like 30 hours into that one playthrough. I want to make sure that things don't go south at the very end. But anyway, we're not here for Baldur's Gate 3, y'all. We're here to talk about Bazett. So starting off with her hits, we're going to dive into her kit with that. She's rocking a double buster, double quick deck, which I think is going to help her out quite a bit as Ruler Scotty does come out for summer, as normal Scotty will really help her in doing very strong quick crits, and then Ruler Scotty comes out and she helps her do very strong buster crits while also buffing up those exceptionally strong quick cards. Look at the 6 hits on them and the 0.8% NP gain. If you are rocking her with, say, Scotties, your Ruler Scotties, she is going to absolutely go ham taro on the quick crits, doing not only a lot of damage, but she's also going to be refunding a massive amount of her NP gain back. Like, we're starting to reach the Jack levels of insanity of how strong these quick cards are getting. It also means with the 10% star gen stat, she actually can drop a decent bit of stars, especially because going into, say, a Brave Chain, she also has that 5-hit extra attack, and when we get the Mighty Chain update for Anniversary, that'll become even easier for her and will really play into her gameplay style of just kind of smacking the enemy a lot until they're nothing more than paste on the ground. One other thing that I think I have to explain with Bazett before we start diving into her skills is the last passive skill that she has, because some people might look at that and not really get what that actually means. Okay, so basically what it does is instead of your offensive buffs expiring at the very beginning of the turn, you may notice this, that let's say you use someone like Waver. Everybody's used Waver, I'm sure. And you notice on the 3rd turn, before the turn ends, the offensive buffs will expire, but you'll still keep your defensive buffs. If you pop all of his skills, you'll notice those defense and damage cut skills fall off at the end of the turn, whereas at the very beginning of the end of your turn, the crit damage and the attack buffs will go away. This will kind of make your offensive buffs act like defensive buffs, right? So you keep them to the end of the turn, which is good because that's when Bazett does her counter damage. Remember, she effectively does most of what she's doing on your opponent's turn. When they're going to be attacking you, she's very reactive, so they put that on there so you don't waste all of her buffs, or she's not just doing very little damage. So just now that I've kind of explained that so you're not confused looking at it, that's essentially how it functions. And even then, you really don't need to know how it functions. If you just kind of play her normally, you might not even notice the difference, but hey, the more you know. Moving into her skills, starting off with skill 1, this is just a very good all-rounder skill. It's going to give her 30% quick, 30% buster, again, as she does primarily use her quick and buster cards. This is going to be very nice in allowing her to not only buff up the NP gain of those quick cards, but raise the damage of 4 of her cards that she has, because unfortunately no arts card buff, but we can only get so much on one unit, because then she's also giving herself 30% crit damage, which is good. You know, I see some people that are like, but it could be 50%, it could be 100%. And for one, Bazett does have something in the back pocket if you want to do insane crit damage. Two, the fact that we know that we're going to get Ruler Scotty, and that normal Scotty pairs very well with Bazett as well. You're probably going to be chilling with 100% quick crit damage and 100% buster crit damage. This is just an additional 30%. But then on top of all of that, look at someone like Morgan, who could do very good crit damage, and she only has 30% crit damage as well. So it's fine. You'll be able to do some pretty nasty crits. But then for whatever reason, they saw Bazett and were like, you know, she's an alter ego. She's already really good into riders, casters, assassins, berserkers, all that good stuff. What if we just give her an extra power mod into casters, which I think is kind of funny, because then you could also slap on the Mage Killer CE, you know, the one with Kiritsugu on it. You could slap that one on there and just really have her just absolutely eviscerate casters, which I think is hilarious, because we just got Hephaestion, who pretty much does the same thing as well. So they really just had no patience for casters this year. They gave us a 4-star on Hephaestion that thrashes them, and then they put out a 5-star premium unit who also thrashes them. So just, again, overall, very, very strong skill. Moving into her second skill, this is where Bazett, you know, really starts to show that she's going to be a very, very strong servant. 50% battery, 1 turn of decent star weight, and 100% crit damage for 1 turn on a 6-turn cooldown. So the 50% battery is obviously to get her into her NP, because her NP is the main gimmick on how she functions in doing the counter damage. But now she also has some burst damage utility as well, being able to just go really Hamtaro the turn you fire this. So essentially you could have an ideal scenario where you have all of our cards laid out, you could fire this, get insane battery, and then follow up on your opponent's turn with the counter damage to really put on the pressure. So it's immediate power that also gets her into her gimmick, which is just very solid overall. And I don't have to tell you, 100% crit damage is really insane. I mean, we've all used Merlin, we'll all probably use Lady Avalon when she comes out. It's quite good. But then finally, there's her third skill. This is more of like her survivability skill. Again, does pair very nice with the fact that she's going to taunt herself on her NP and have everybody attack her. So giving herself the evasion to, you know, guarantee live all the hits, unless they obviously have sure hit or pierce invincibility. You know, that can also put a little bit of a damper in things, but ideally, you know, you're using this to tank all the hits, take no damage, and put a lot of punishment back on your opponent. Also giving yourself debuff immunity, which can be good, because again, remember, they're locked onto you. They might try to throw some stray skill or debuff your way, something annoying on those lines. So being able to whiff that is also nice. And on the same avenue of immediate power on the second skill, she bombs 20 stars. So again, you can immediately just start kind of getting into things if you just want to rip through all 3 of the skills and then just start smacking them immediately. And then I guess we probably just should lead into the NP, because this is the main gimmick that she has. It essentially functions as a 1-hit quick NP, but the base damage scaling is not as high as a single target quick NP, because a single target quick NP would usually have 1200% for NP1, whereas Bazett's scaling starts at 600%. So do keep in mind that if you're, say, expecting her to hit as hard as, I don't know, Melt Lilith as like a single target, unbuffed quick NP, she's not going to do quite that amount of damage, but it's also because it kind of also can function as an AoE NP. And even with the lower scaling, they do try to give her some tools to work with. So obviously she's drawing the attention of everyone to herself. She's taunting herself. And then her overcharge is going to give her 10 to 30% attack, and it procs first, you know, giving her a little bit of extra damage for this quote-unquote NP hit. And then it's also going to reduce their quick resistance by 10% for 3 turns. So you're also stacking that on top of the enemy if you are fighting a boss. So you'll do more and more damage, while also generating 10 stars, so you can kind of keep critting and still obliterating the enemy on your turn, and then on their turn, you're kind of stacking this damage to do, well, more damage, right? It's a little bit weird. It could take a little bit of getting used to when you actually use her, because if you are bringing her somewhere and you're like, oh, she's just going to obliterate everything, might need a little bit of trial and error, you know, just a little bit of trying to figure out how it works. But once you do get the hang of it, she's very, very good. You know, she's very fun to use. Which is why she's one of those units that I don't think you can just go to the damage chart and be like, oh, her damage is really low, because she doesn't really function like, say, Summer Okita Alter, who also has a 600% NP damage scaling as an AoE quick unit, but Okita Alter is designed to kind of go into nodes and do this AoE looping, whereas Bazett is not designed in the same way. They kind of took a chance on this unit. I think it succeeded somewhat, but I do think there will be a lot of people that will just jump to the damage chart, see that her damage is not all that great, and kind of lose the idea that that's not practically how you're going to use her. That's not, you know, it's not very true to how you're going to use her and how viable she's going to be. Now, that being said, if you do want to bring her as a farmer, yeah, the damage can be a little bit of a concern, if you wanted to like counter everybody and, get all those kills and everything, that can be a bit concerning. But again, I think that's more of a gimmick for Bazett, if anything. I think her primary method of use is going to be going into boss fights, going into CQ, stuff along those lines, and I think she'll absolutely do fine in those. And if you want to go for the gimmick, especially if you see a caster or something, you can bring her there, because then her damage actually starts to get pretty decent. One final note is that there might be slight annoyances when using Bazett, since most of her damage comes from the counters, but the counters can't break bars. That can be a little bit annoying because it might extend how long you're in some of these challenge quests. But as someone who, myself personally, I'm not a huge fan of like min-turning things. I think if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. It's just not for me. I'm not quite sweaty enough to be like, I gotta get this done in 3 turns. All I care about is clearing the quest. So for someone like me, not really a problem. It could be a bit annoying if you really do need to take the boss down though and say this turn, or I really got to get this break bar done. That can be a little bit of a hiccup, so just make sure you're keeping track of that. But I imagine for people that like doing min turns, Bazett is not the craziest person to use, because not being able to break bars is just going to inflate artificially how long you're in some of those boss fights. So that's why I think she's really good. If you were to ask me where I would rank her, because obviously when we get to the extra class stuff, Bazett's not going to be on those tier lists because she just came out this year, not last year. She would still probably end up somewhere around A tier. I think she's very strong. She has a lot of very good practical uses, but there are things that do kind of hold her back. But that's just because they took a chance on a new thing. And not everything's going to be as broken as, being able to change from being an AoE to a single target, or being able to change your card types entirely. Being able to do this counter thing, I think was very neat. And as a first attempt on a counter type servant, I think it went rather well, and I'm very excited to see what the next one is going to look like. Because at the very least, Forum, the way that they kind of build their units, they do seem to build off and learn from their mistakes. When Dante's first came out, he was kind of like a trial run for Jelter. And then the next Avenger, was Jelter. And then, she was actually really, really strong when she came out. And then obviously they fixed up Dante's later by making him the premier quick looping guy. But you get what I'm saying. Usually they roll out one servant, and then if it kind of flops a little bit, they learn from those mistakes, which has been happening less and less. Because even though I have some problems with Bazett, they're not all that, huge. She's still like an A tier unit. I think they're getting better and better at designing and making these units so they don't have to keep learning from their mistakes. I mean, look at Pretender Oberon, the first guy for that class, and he's nuts. And then Hephaestion drops, and she's also really good. So we'll see is all I could say, but let me know how your summons are going in the comments down below. I will be summoning not for Bazett in particular, but for a specific CE that is on the banner. I'm pretty sure if you've summoned on the banner, you've seen a million of them. I need to get my grubby little mitts on those. So with that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace, late guys.